On the lineup today, we take a look at the first round of the NBA playoffs. Stay tuned. Hello, friends, and welcome to our last episode of Lions Lineup for the year. I'm Alex Zucker, and I'm joined here today by Joe Caputo and Joe Basile. We've got a lot of good things to talk about today about the NBA playoffs, but the first question I want to ask you guys deals with the New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics. Now, as we've seen, the Knicks have jumped out to a 2-0 series lead as of Wednesday, which is today when we're doing it. Do the Knicks have this series locked up, guys?
I think they absolutely do. You look at the contributions that they've been getting across the roster with from all the different places. Of course, Carmelo Anthony, 30-point game after 30-point game. But even J.R. Smith has really stepped his game up the last couple of weeks to month and a half. He's really stepped up. He's been a big reason why the Knicks have been able to go on a big run. Of course, getting Tyson Chandler and Kenyon Martin back in the playoffs really helps their interior defense. If they can keep this up, I certainly foresee them.
I'm going to say not so fast, okay? Right. Now, I know it's a 7-game series, and the Knicks won the first 2 at home, which they're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. But all you have to do if you're the Celtics is win one road game. Well, they have another one coming up in Game 5. Yeah. So all they have to do is go home, and they have to win their 2 home games right now. That's their task. Mm-hmm. And the Celtics have been very good at home lately, throughout the entire season, really. They've been playing good first halves against the Knicks. They just can't play a complete game. If they can get Kevin Garnett going, and they have to run with the Knicks. They cannot score in the half court consistently, as we've seen over the first few games. But if the Celtics could run it and be able to score in the 90s, maybe even crack 100, I think that they have a shot to even this series up at 2, and then we're going to be talking about a lot more of an interesting series coming back to New York in Game 5. But I just want to point out one thing. Kenyon Martin, like you mentioned, Kenyon Martin has been awesome for these 2 games for the Knicks. That was such a huge signing. For a guy that was just sitting on his couch at home waiting for someone to pick him up, that was a great signing for the Knicks.
Yeah, it certainly didn't seem like it was anything. Oh, yeah, they signed him to a 10-game contract. Big deal. But he has really played very well for the Knicks, especially giving them a lift on defense with Rasheed Wallace now having been injured at the time and now retired. With Tyson Chandler kind of being in and out with injuries. He's really provided a good lift to the defense.
They had a huge problem at power forward going into these playoffs if they didn't have Kenyon Martin because of what happened to Rasheed Wallace and they cut Kurt Thomas. And they didn't know who was going to be able to guard Kevin Garnett. Was it going to be Tyson Chandler? But Kenyon Martin has given them a great opportunity to, leave Chandler in the paint to protect the basket more like he's accustomed to doing.
Well, guys, we all know that Boston's a very good defensive team, and they haven't played that bad defensively, but it just seems like they don't have enough offensive firepower to stay with the Knicks. The Knicks have just outscored them in 2 games. If they had Rajon Rondo, would this series be 1-1, or would the Celtics be the favorites?
It's tough to say. I mean, looking at it right now, the obvious answer would be yes. Since they're down 2-0, they can't be doing much worse than that. But they didn't play too poorly throughout the remainder of the season without having Rajon Rondo. I mean, their play didn't really decline after losing Rondo. I know Rondo's a great player, and he's a decent defender. I think he's a little overrated as a defender. But the problem right now for the Celtics is not guarding the point guard. So Rondo wouldn't really have much of an impact on the defensive end. And then you look at offensively, I think, it would give them another dynamic that they don't have. I mean, Avery Bradley is not a capable point guard, but they are running their offense through Paul Pierce mostly, and he's able to contribute from the point guard role.
He's no Melo, though.
He's not. Well, we're not talking about Melo right now, but I think that it's. I'm going to say that it wouldn't have made that big of a difference. What do you think, Joe?
I'm gonna agree with you. It's kind of that whole Bill Simmons Ewing effect thing.
Yeah.
Your best player goes out and maybe the performance doesn't necessarily struggle as much as you'd expect it to. And while Rondo going out was a big loss for the Celtics, they still played pretty well. They averaged about the same points on offense. They actually got a little bit better defensively because Avery Bradley, a better defensive player, was playing more minutes. And as far as would this playoff series be a little different? Yeah, but I just don't know. Like you said, Paul Pierce has done a capable enough job at kind of running the offense, and if Jeff Green can kind of
Well,
get his
Jeff
act
Green-
together here in the playoffs.
Jeff
I think
Green's kind of the X factor in the series.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on your point about Melo. He's a guy that he's going to get his shots off, no matter what. It's up to you to make his shots as uncomfortable as you possibly can. But the problem that the Celtics are having with Melo is that they don't have the combination of quickness and length that you need to at least make Melo uncomfortable. So you see, he hasn't shot great in the first 2 games.
But he's getting his points, though.
But
right?
he's scored 30 points in the first 2 games. So he's doing a good job in that regard. And I just feel like the Celtics, that's going to be a big problem defensively for the Celtics. They just have to get him to shoot, under 40%. And get him to take still as many shots.
Yeah.
You want him to shoot. You just don't want to make him uncomfortable.
All right, so guys, I know we got to move on, but last question for this topic: how many games does this series go, and who wins?
I think it goes at least 5 games, mostly just because I get the feeling Boston's going to win at least one
of those 2
at home.
Okay.
I think they'll win Game 3. First game back in Boston after obviously what happened there. There's going to be a lot of emotions. They might get a little bit extra lift from the crowd that night. I definitely see them winning that game. They could win both of them. I say at longest this goes 6 games and the Knicks win.
Yeah, I think they're going to win Game 3 too.
The big question is that Game 4.
Yeah, Game 4. I think if the Knicks win Game 4, I think they have the series.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the Knicks in 5.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, we will see what happens. Let's move on to the other team in our area, the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets got off to a great start in Game 1 against the Chicago Bulls with a dominant win. I know, Joe, you were at the game.
I was not.
You were not at the game. Right? Well, some of our friends were at the game.
We'll edit that out later.
Okay. But it was a good game for the Nets. They played very well. But the Bulls came back in Game 2 and pretty much stole the win. I know they won by about 8. This series is knotted at 1. We're going back to Chicago for Game 4 or Game 3 and Game 4. What do you guys think is going to happen? It looked like the Nets, a lot of people were saying the Nets were going to sweep the Bulls, and the Bulls charged right back. What's going on here?
I think that after you see a team dominate the way the Nets dominated in Game 1, you kind of go overboard and taking too much out of one game. And the Bulls are too good of a defensive team to just lay down and get swept in a series. You knew they were going to come back. Now, the fact that they were able to win was huge, obviously. Stealing a game on the road is what you need to do as the lower seed in the NBA, in any playoff series. But I think the Nets are going to be okay. I think that it was a bad offensive game. They kind of went back to the whole isolation, Joe Johnson, and this stuff that we were seeing.
The stuff that got Avery Johnson fired.
Exactly, the stuff that got Avery Johnson fired. And it was not Nets basketball in PJ Carlissimo's era that I saw them play in Game 2. They've been a lot better of a team moving the basketball. They cut down their turnovers at the end of the year. They were running the offense a lot more through Brook Lopez at the end of the year, and they kind of got away from all of that in Game 2.
And Darren Williams was playing out of his mind after the All-Star break.
He was. Game 2, he was bad. And there's really no other way to put it. I mean, he was
one for 9,
I think. So it was a bad game for Darren Williams, but I don't see that happening for a majority of the games of this series. Another thing I want to point out is the Bulls have not been a dominant team at home this year. They're 24 and 17 at home this year, which is an average home record. But the Nets should be.
How have the Nets done on the road this year?
The Nets about the same record. I think 23 and 18 maybe.
Actually, a pretty good road.
Yeah. So I think that the Nets, if they could get the play back from Darren Williams, will be okay.
I don't know. This matchup has worried me ever since it kind of became inevitable that the Nets were going to take on the Bulls. The Bulls are a physical team. They're a very good defensive team. Even with Noah not at 100%.
But he was a lot better in Game 2.
Yeah, that matchup with Brook Lopez kind of worries me a little bit. I thought for a second that the Nets were going to be the ones getting swept out of the water before they came out and played really well in Game 1. It's going to be a rough series. It should be interesting to see how it plays out. The Nets have to take, obviously, at least one of these games in Chicago if they want to have a prayer
well, guys,
of winning.
One thing they've done a lot of stats on if you win, say, Game 1, what's your odds of winning the series? But we've also seen that teams, after the first 2 games, if they're split, the team that wins Game 3 wins the series, I think, over 70% of the time. Would you guys say that whoever wins Game 3 in the series wins the series?
No. Because if the Nets lose Game 3 and win Game 4,
but that Game 4 is a must-win if they lose Game
3.
Well, on the road with the Bulls up 2-0.
I think if the Nets win Game 3, they're in really good shape. But if the Bulls win Game 3, they won their home game.
Yeah.
So it's not that big of a deal.
Whichever team doesn't win, it's a must-win in Game 4. But the thing is, it's tougher to have a must-win on the road than it is.
Yeah, you're right.
Home.
You're right. But one thing, I just want to get back to the play of the Nets though, real quick. C.J. Watson has been unbelievable
yeah,
in
he's
these two
played
games.
great. In
They
game two,
need
he
to
played
find
well.
him more minutes because you saw Darren Williams playing poorly. And Gerald Wallace is frustrating to watch because they're leaving him wide open on the 3-point line, possession after possession, and he cannot make an open three. So if your offense is struggling in game two in the third quarter, as they came out and they were down 1 to start the third quarter, and they were struggling mightily, you got to get C.J. Watson in there sooner. You got to get something going offensively because Gerald Wallace is not doing it for them.
I could put Stackhouse in. I think he's better than Wallace at this point.
Don't get me started with
Shooting
Stackhouse.
Shooting three. I've got a theory. No matter who wins game 3, game 4, Rose is coming back.
Wow. We got that on tape.
That's my
that's
my
bold
theory.
prediction.
It might
Mr.
not be
Basile.
right, but I get the feeling
why
that
do you-
Rose will come back.
Why
this
game
series.
4 though?
Come on, man. You can't just do this. All right, well,
Because like we were saying, whoever wins game, it's going to be a must-win.
All right,
The Bulls
I
are going
gotta
to
cut
want
you
him
short.
on there.
Last,
They'll twist his arm to come
real
back.
quick. Who wins this series and how many games?
Nets in 7.
I'll say the same. Nets and
All right.
7.
Well, it should be interesting. Should be exciting. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with much more talk about the NBA playoffs, a few other series right after this break. Welcome back, everyone. Alex Zucker here along with Joe Vasile and Joe Caputo. So, guys, we just talked about two series that are pretty competitive and pretty close. Let's talk about one that probably won't be competitive, but a team in this series probably will make a lot of noise in the playoffs. You got the Miami Heat and the Milwaukee Bucks. Miami has won the first 2 games, both games pretty convincingly at the end. The Bucks were able to stay with the Heat throughout the first half in Game 1, and the Heat were only up by 3 at the end of the third quarter in Game 2. Obviously, you guys can agree that Miami's going to win this series. I think Milwaukee has, a 0.3% chance? Yet some of their guys keep saying they're going to win. Does anybody in the Western Conference, we know San Antonio's banged up right now, and OKC has not had success against the Heat this year. Is there anybody in the Western Conference that can compete with them in the finals? Is there anybody in the Eastern Conference that can
Well,
beat
first
them?
of all, I want to just say that the series is over, obviously. They're going to get swept, probably, the Bucks. The Bucks just... They don't have a good enough offense. They're shooting mid-range jump shots with Brandon Jennings and Monte Ellis. That's their offense. And they're actually doing a decent job on LeBron. And this is kind of good, I think, for the rest of the teams in the remainder of the Eastern Conference playoffs and in the NBA Finals to get film on how to at least slow down LeBron. The way Luc Richard and Mbah a Moute has played him has been very good. But moving on to your question, I think that the best chance in the West still has to be the Thunder. Because I was starting to think it was going to be the Nuggets, but then they lost Gallinari, and they looked terrible yesterday against the Warriors.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Their defense, it looked awful. Now, you look at the matchup that they could have for LeBron with Iguodala, that's favorable, but the rest of their defense really isn't good enough. So I think that as bad as the Thunder have played against the Heat in this season and in the NBA Finals last year, they still pose the biggest problem for the Heat. What do you think?
I agree. I think it's got to be Oklahoma City just because, like you said, they've got the most talent of any team probably in the West. And that's what it's going to take to end up beating the Heat. They know from their series last year, where they came up short, and obviously they're going to be trying to work on those kinds of things. Didn't necessarily work out very well during the regular season, but maybe looking at some of this tape from this Bucks series to try and slow down LeBron. The problem is if you slow down LeBron, there's still Dwayne Wade. Chris Anderson has been playing out of his mind.
It's almost not fair.
And like I said, with Kenyon Martin being a great signing, that's another great 10-day contract that turned into a full-year contract for Chris Anderson.
And he's Birdman, by the way.
The thing you have to do to LeBron is, you can't have one guy guarding him the entire time. Mm-hmm. The thing that the Bucks have done well against him is they've had Mbah a Moute on him, but as you see in the picture here, John Henson has also guarded him. I think the Thunder have to look into, if they do play the Heat, throwing Serge Ibaka on LeBron for a short period of time.
But Ibaka, I was going to say, can he keep up with LeBron?
Well, they can't do it all game, but I think that for spurts you have to do it because LeBron has showed that length bothers him. Mm-hmm. And I think that Ibaka could, obviously Durant is long, but Ibaka's stronger than Durant. I know he's not as quick.
He's a much better
but
defender.
I think that maybe that they should look into doing something.
All right, so last question on the Heat, guys. Obviously they got to get to the finals first,
Yeah.
and the one team that they're likely to face in the Eastern Conference Finals would probably be the New York Knicks. Now, we'll see. The Knicks still have to win 2 series, but that's probably the most likely scenario. Can the Knicks make some noise and steal a few games?
I thought no coming into the playoffs, but the Knicks are starting to strike me as the kind of team that plays better as an underdog. Just because they shoot so many threes, and if they get hot, you start getting confident.
Exactly.
You know, it could be a series where the Knicks just shoot terribly and they get swept,
Or they shoot really well, yeah.
they could shoot the lights out and they can give the Heat a problem. That's what you have to do. You have to limit the turnovers, which the Knicks do. And if they're hitting their threes, not as many transition opportunities.
Can
for the
they
Heat.
play good defensively enough to stay with them? Because
I think so.
I
I think the matchup of Anthony on LeBron would be an interesting one. Just because I think LeBron is one of the few players
it's
who can
Anthony
slow
versus
down
LeBron,
Anthony.
but you have help. You have Tyson Chandler.
Yeah, there's Tyson Chandler
protecting the
yeah.
basket.
Exactly.
Well, you got to force
Protecting when he
LeBron to the
drives in,
outside and have
exactly.
him shoot perimeter
Yeah,
shots.
definitely.
That's his
I think the
weakness,
Knicks.
but-
I'm starting to believe a little bit more that the Knicks may have a shot. I do.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, I'm personally a Knicks fan. We'll see what happens with that series. Let's move on to our next series that we were talking about, and I believe it is the Indiana Pacers and the Atlanta Hawks, guys. What do you think about this series so far? Obviously, Pacers are the favorite so far, but
I'm not enjoying this series.
Yeah.
It's kind of actually, it's probably the most boring series to watch. I don't think the Hawks have a shot. I mean, Josh Smith is now banged up. Pacers have a 2-0 series lead, and they've looked dominant in doing it. Paul George is really stepping up. He had a triple-double in Game 1. He's getting to the free throw line.
And he had a fantastic season, too.
Yeah, and the Pacers play excellent defense. The Hawks are having major problems scoring in the half court. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Pacers should win this series in 5.
Absolutely. The Pacers are a very good team. I think they're gonna.
I think they may even be a problem for the Knicks. I do.
Yeah,
Pacers, it'd be a good
yeah.
series.
They could cause the Knicks a big problem, and
I
really
think
it's
they
a
cause
shame.
more problems than the Nets would.
I'd love to see a Pacers Heat series.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll necessarily end up getting that, but that would really be something because those teams match up really well. The Pacers are just they will grind you down and wear you. It's brutal to
It'd be
play.
a good
against
matchup
them.
against the Heat, but unfortunately, like you
Yeah,
said,
they would get the next.
So let's move on to our next series. We've run a little short on time. We've got OKC and the Houston Rockets. OKC's up 2-0, I believe.
Yep.
They're probably going to win this series. Any quick thoughts?
I think that OKC. I mean, they got to take care of business as the Heat do. I mean, you want to go through these playoffs if you're OKC playing as minimal games as possible because
Well,
of
the Heat would say
how
the same
much
thing,
I know,
right?
but
Yeah.
you're going to have to play full 48-minute games against the Heat. The Thunder don't look like they're going to have any problems with the Rockets, and I think that a key player throughout this entire postseason for the Thunder obviously is Russell Westbrook because you know what you're going to get from Durant, but Russell Westbrook is a guy that if he's on, he's one of the top 5 players in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Rockets. I like Daryl Morey, their GM. I just don't think this is their year, though. They're a couple of years away.
All right, well, let's move on. We got our next series. We got San Antonio and the Lakers. Now, this series has a lot of drama in it. Kobe obviously is hurt, so it's all on Dwight Howard, Pau Gasol, and Steve Nash. The Spurs are also banged up. A lot of people are saying Tony Parker is a shell of his old self, but they still got Ginobili. They still got Duncan. Can the Lakers win this series? I mean, it comes down to yes or no.
I think they can if Dwight Howard,
Plays like
becomes
Dwight Howard?
Dwight Howard and
Yeah.
plays like Dwight Howard before, this year. I think now that Kobe's out, Howard's been kind of going back to more of his old self, mostly just because the offense now has to run through him. I think, with Parker not being what he once was, Ginobili, though, has just kicked it into a whole nother gear here in the playoffs.
It's a good game 1.
Yeah.
I don't see this Lakers being able to win the series. They don't have enough perimeter scoring. Obviously,
Kobe,
losing Kobe
Yeah.
is I mean, you can't quantify that. But the fact that they just don't have a guy to step up and make a jump shot late in the game, I think is huge.
Yeah, you can't rely on
Exactly.
Ron
When
Artest.
you look at every good team in the NBA, they have that guy that could step up and make a big shot late in the game. And when you have the Spurs, who are probably going to be in every game late,
they
there's
have
no
those guys
knockout
that can
blow
push
that the Lakers could throw. Now, I really love the way Gasol and Dwight Howard are playing down low, but how much could they do as a two-man show? I mean, there's no one helping them out on the perimeter right now, and that's a major issue. The Spurs are probably going to win the series, I think, rather easily.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move on. We got the Denver Nuggets and the Golden State Warriors. I believe Golden State
Golden State
with
just
an
stole
upset
one
win in
yesterday,
Game 2 on the road in Denver, so it's 1-1. Can Golden State upset
This series
Denver?
just became a lot more interesting with the way Golden State played because when David Lee went down in Game 1 and then he was announced that he was out for the rest of the series, I think that a lot of people ruled out Golden State. But the one thing that Golden State has been able to do is get a lot of open looks from 3. And we already know how good of a three-point shooting they are between Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. I think that Golden State has put themselves in a position now that they need to win their 2 home games, but if they do, obviously they're in complete control of this series. You come back to Denver up 3-1. The thing that I had a problem with going to this series was not necessarily that Golden State would have a problem winning their home games, but whether or not they would be able to go into Denver, who lost 3 home games all year,
but don't
and
you
beat
think
them in Denver.
that Denver's going to be hungrier now in Game 3? And
They're
going
to be hungrier,
and try to steal
but
one of them?
Denver is a team that feeds so much off of their home crowd. They're a team that likes to run. They get so many points in the paint, and they're not a good shooting team. And all their percentages go up so much when they're home. On the road, I think they're going to have a problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, also the altitude plays a big factor in the way that the Nuggets play. It's hard for the road teams to come in and keep up with that throughout the entire game. So once again, another kind of big surprise yesterday as the Warriors won without David Lee. The Nuggets are a very deep team. They don't have that one big star, which I think kind of works to their detriment a little bit.
It does, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I think you need that one guy.
Yeah, exactly. If Golden State can win at home and they can take care of business, win these 2 games, go back to Denver up 3-1, they definitely have the psychological edge, and then they've got obviously the 3-1 edge. I think Golden State might be able to squeeze this one out.
And we're talking about Golden State going back home and winning these 2 games, and maybe some people are saying how likely is that? I think there's a decent shot it happens because the way that they've played at home this year, they got one of the best crowds, and when you get a team that can shoot as well as them, I mean, you make a couple shots in the first quarter at home, you feel like you're shooting the ball into the ocean. I mean, that's the analogy.
It's going to be tough for them to beat a good Denver team 3 times in a row, though. I personally feel like they're going to have to win at least one more in Denver, and I think they can, though.
You think they
I think they're going to have to win one more in Denver.
Well, I mean, they don't.
I know they don't, but I can't see the Denver losing 3 games there. I feel like Denver will find a way to win one of these next 2.
Well, they better.
We'll see. Absolutely. All right, our final series of this show, guys, will be the LA Clippers against the Memphis Grizzlies. Clippers are up 2-0. They've looked good. Now, obviously, Chris Paul came up huge in Game 2. What a move. The fact that he got the ball over the 2 defenders. They couldn't have defended him any better than that.
I mean, that was magical what he did with that.
I mean, and we've seen over the years that the Grizzlies have had a lot of bad luck late in games, particularly against the Clippers. Can they find a way to fight their way back into this series? 2 games at home now.
No. Joe, you want to start this one off?
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, the first 2 games they've been good games. I was excited for this matchup, but the Clippers are. I don't think they've left the Grizzlies with anything to kind of build on or say, hey, at least we had this. I don't know. The Clippers have kind of taken all momentum in this series, and it's hard to imagine them losing it at this point.
I think the Clippers are one of the most underrated teams in basketball.
I agree.
I think they might even be the most underrated team in basketball. No one's really giving them a shot in these playoffs. Now, it's unfortunate for them they have to play OKC in the next round. If it was San Antonio, I would think
probably
they'd
beat the Spurs, right?
but they're not going to get to play them.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. If the Spurs were the 1 seed, I would say there's a legitimate shot the Clippers could find themselves in the Western Conference Finals this year. I think it's going to be a good series with OKC. I think they're definitely going to win the series. Memphis will probably take one at home, but I don't think the Clippers will have a problem finishing this series off. They're deep. They throw a lot of guys in there. Most bench points in the NBA come from the Clippers bench. And when you got Chris Paul running the show, I mean that's just as good as anyone other than maybe LeBron. So I believe in the Clippers. I'm starting to believe in them a lot more than I did. I like the way their bigs play. Blake Griffin's been playing well, and I think that they could give the Thunder a problem. I think that they're a contender in these Western Conference playoffs.
All right, guys. Well, it's a great discussion. All right, real quick, who's your winner? I mean, I know if we all had to put a lot of money on it, we'd say Miami, but what's your gut telling you? Joe, I know you said the Knicks may have a shot against them. Not that you like the Knicks, but
I still have Miami beating OKC in the final.
Joe?
It's hard to imagine Miami not winning this year, but just to be different, I'll say OKC.
And just because I'm a homer and a Knicks fan, I'll say the Knicks. All right, well, that will do it for this edition of Lions Lineup. It's our last show of the year. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you'd like to become a part of Lions Lineup or work for LTV, email our account at ltv@tcnj.edu. Now, since it's our last Lions Lineup, I'd just like to thank all of the crew who have worked on the show throughout the entire year. Everyone's done an excellent job making this show happen behind the scenes. I'd like to thank Joe. I'd like to thank both Joes. I'd like to thank Chris Drabick, Mike Joswick, Jasmine Bowie, all of our hosts that have done an excellent job. Joe, you in particular, for running the entire show all year. And lastly, I'd just like to thank everybody at LTV. It's been a great year. We've gotten a lot accomplished, and I really am looking forward to seeing this show move forward in the future. So For Joe Caputo, Joe Vasile, and all of us here at LTV, I'm Alex Zucker. We will see you next time.